What's up, everybody on YouTube? It's your boy, the Memphis XLR8, coming at you with an updated deck profile on my Kuriboh Spam Swarm Getting Everybody's Way deck. So for our monster lineup, we've got ourselves 3 Hairy Balls, 3 Hairy Balls with wings, 2 Hairy Balls popping out of balls, 1 Fabulous Golden Boy, 3 of Jesus's Balls, 3 Elvish Balls, 1 Edgy McFucklord, 3 Cat JoJo Stands, 2 Clown Boys, and 1 guy having a bad time at PvP. For our spell lineup, we have 3 Sidestepping Masters, 3 Screw You Maxi, 1 guy digging himself out of a hole, 2 Magical Capsules, 1 Monsters Reborn, 2 Tornadoes, and 1 Flower Guy coming out of Scar. Our trap lineup consists of 2 Nun Force and 3 Screw Off Force. And so for our extra deck, we've got 2 best Link monsters in the game, 2 Skater Girls that should have been a UA monster, 1 big old dragon, 1 bigger dragon, 1 anime protagonist, 2 Bible references, 2 Fist of the North Star Boys, 1 Harpy on steroids, 2 Best Princess, and 1 Little Lady. Our side deck I'll go over in a moment. So this deck here we've got is a very simple but very effective Kuriboh build where we're just trying to outsource and outlast our opponents by using mostly Kuriboh monsters as well as some choice tech cards here. You know, most of our monsters are all about mitigating damage, keeping monsters on the board, giving us some life points, just staying alive so long that our opponent will be out of resources and just be unable to counter anything we do. One of our most powerful combos involves the OG Kuriboh, whose effect is pretty, substandard by today's standards, but when combined with Multiply, you have a very powerful Link engine where you can just summon a Kuriboh, you play this, you get 5 tokens, and then you can go for good old Link Kuriboh, Masquerena, and any of our Link form monsters. Primarily we go for a good old Avramax off of Masquerena, so we have a monster that can't be targeted or destroyed, beats over special summon monsters, spin things back to the deck when he gets destroyed, and protects all your little ones. So amazing first turn play with Avramaxu, just combining these two. And you can also go for other things. Borrelsword Dragon's very useful for, hitting our opponent really, really hard, as well as just switching monsters into defense mode when they try to attack into us. And another nice little guy here, Topologic Bomber Dragon. This is my own spicy little tech card. Basically, if a monster is special summoned to the zone this guy points to, he nukes everything in the main monster zone. And so if you don't know Link Kuriboh, you contribute a monster that's level 1 on your board to summon this from the graveyard. So basically, you get your Link Kuribohs in the grave, you get your Masquerena, you get them all, you use all these little cards, you bring out your Bomber Dragon, you let your opponent start doing their moves, and then you bring back a Link Kuriboh with your last token, and then Bomber blows up the board. So basically, yeah, these 2 cards, your most important playmakers, but they're not all that's a part of this deck. You've got your Winged Kuribohs, which when destroyed, you take no battle damage. Nice little card for if you're just against a wall and you really need an extra turn. You've got your Link Kuriboh, who's mostly a discard fodder in of itself because he doesn't do anything on his own. If he's tributed, you get to draw a card, which is something you can do off of Link Kuriboh. You can tribute this guy to summon Link Kuriboh from the graveyard, and you get to draw a card on top of it, which is pretty nice. You don't do it all the time, but it warrants a one-off for any Kuriboh. We've got the Clear Kuriboh, who on occasion mitigates monster effect damage. Not too often, but every once in a while it will come in handy. Most important part of him is that you can banish him when your opponent declares direct attack. You can draw 1 card. If it's a monster, you can summon it. If it's a spell trap, you get to keep it in your hand. So, most often you hope to draw into a Kuriboh or perform a Pal Kuriboh. Either one works. And so, also, we've got ourselves a Kuriboh. Beautiful Kuriboh. If your opponent direct attacks you, you can summon it from your hand, redirect the attack to Kuriboh, and if you would take damage, you gain life points instead. Really effective against things like Chaos Max Dragon with this double piercing damage, because you can put this in defense mode and your opponent has to attack into it. So very nice card here. So one of our most important playmakers though is Kuriboh. Kuriboh, when it's in your hand, you can discard it to bring back a monster destroyed in battle, which is nice. But its most important and honestly most amazing effect is that you can banish this guy from the graveyard in order to summon all the Kuribohs you want from your graveyard, including Link Kuribohs. And it's just an amazing card. And you want this guy in your graveyard as often as possible, which was why we've got the Foolish Burial, as well as Kurib Bandit. Curry Bandit, you know, he's an interesting tech choice. I mean, you have to normal summon it for him to use his effect. You can tribute him to excavate 5 cards. You get a spell trap excavated and the rest go to the graveyard. You hope to dump as many Kuribohs and relink Kuribohs and clear Kuribohs as you can. And just get into one of your playmakers, your multiplies, your flutes, etc., etc. It's a nice little card here. But yeah, these two conjunction, you really want them to be going off together. It works rather well. And so next card, we got King Caballo, which is just an amazing card. When it's summoned, you get to bring back a level 1 monster. It also works when it's flipped face up, but you really don't want that to happen. Because that monster, what was it? Yeah, if this guy leaves the field, then that thing you bring back gets banished. Had to remind myself of that effect. Because usually that doesn't happen. I usually just normal summon this, and then I get to bring back a monster, bring back Kuriboh, go for multiply, or just, go into one of our many Xyz monsters. This is a nice little card for doing that. It also works same way as our Motivating Captain over here. Does the same thing as King Caballo, pretty much. Except that Motivating Captain has a wider pool of summoning. You can bring back Curry Bandit, for example. And as well, we also have the Jester Confit, which is a spare Link / Xyz material. You can you just special summon this thing from your hand in attack mode. It's a nice little thing, just an extra body on the board. We already talked about multiply, but this here is our Searcher card. This is the Flute of Summoning Kuriboh. You take a Kuriboh or a Winged Kuriboh, add it to your hand, or summon it. And so why I said screw off to Max C, actually, if Max C, Crazy Talk, ever came off the ban list, and you play this card and your opponent Max C's you can actually just add the card to your hand and it gets around Max C. Granted, Max C's still in play and all that good stuff, but your opponent doesn't immediately get a start. You can just, not special summon that turn and then your opponent wastes the Max C. So, it's a nice little thing here. Also works good against, like, Dogwood and such and such. So, of course, Foolish Burial, obvious choice, dumping Kuribohs, relink Kuribohs, clear Kuribohs, those are your main choices for dumpage. These are the only dumping sort of cards you really have. You really want most of the rest in your hand or on your field. Let's see what it was. We got the the Diff Burial from Different Dimension, not Foolish Burial, we already talked about that. So this card, you get the 3 banished monsters, put them back in your graveyard, really works late game. If you've used up a lot of your Kuribohs, you can just put them all back in your graveyard. So essentially, it's like running 9 copies of Kuriboh, and it's very much amazing. You could run more of this, but honestly, you really don't need to. But yeah, two is good. Monster Born, pretty obvious, just bring back a monster, good for making more plays. Twin Twisters, again, obvious if your opponent's playing a lot of spell traps. They're playing, floodgates, things like that. You really should just run some spell trap removal. I use Twin Twisters because we do have some things to discard. You could use Heavy Storm Duster, but honestly, I like to go into the battle phase with my Kuriboh boys because they're very focused on the battle phase. Incredibly focused. And of course, good old 1-for-1 obvious tech choice for any level 1 monster deck, because all of our main monster zones, or monsters, they're level 1 except for Curry Bandit. So, discard a monster, and then summon a monster from hand or deck. Very, very good. Waboku is a nice little tech choice for just stopping your opponent from OTKing you and the like. It'll protect your monsters if you chain it with Kuriboh, bring back 5 Kuribohs, make it so they can't be destroyed in battle, can't take any damage that turn. Bait out your opponent's Raigeki because they'll probably, use that Raigeki on you anyway. So, it's a nice little card here. And of course, Storming Mirror Force, same deal as Waboku. It's for stopping your opponent's big combo-heavy boards, just swarming the board, trying to OTK you. Again, you can chain it with Kuriboh, it's pretty nice. Just send everything back into the hand. You could also contend with Drowning Mirror Force, but I prefer Storming personally. That's just my personal preference. So, extra decky time. Of course, Link Kuriboh, best Link monster, uses only 1 level 1 monster. You can tribute him in order to reduce a monster's attack to 0 to the end phase. And of course, you can tribute a level 1 monster to summon this from the graveyard, and then you can do that again. So, you can do it only twice per turn, but it's still pretty dang useful, good old Link Kuriboh. Masquerena is only in here for going into higher Link monsters, but it gives that monster destruction protection, which is very key for bringing out big monsters, especially Avramax. So, also, we've got ourselves some Xyz in this deck. Embodiments of Punishment and Crime, I very rarely bring out. Honestly, if you were going to take anything out of this deck, I would take these guys out. But I like to leave them in here because they represent the spirit of a defensive deck that just goes back on the offense when your opponent least expects it. And these two do, on occasion, work. Like, if you're playing against, like, I don't know, Cubics or any sort of deck that focuses on battle removal or just straight up battling in general, these two work just fine. Obviously, they're susceptible to, being negated. But the thing is, your opponent has to negate them both. Because if you just have the other on the board, they both keep their effects. So if your opponent negates, say, crime, punishment still works. So if you can force your opponent to attack only punishment using his effect, then it'll still work out for you. Nice little wall there. Good old Lionheart, our bossiest of boss monsters, reflects any damage that he would, your opponent would give to you from battling into this guy, just attaching material. He's a beautiful OTK, especially if you have like twin swords onto this thing. You can dish out some massive damage. Just absolutely massive damage with the twin swords of flashing light. Very nice. And even if you run out of materials somehow, he still reflects damage. It just becomes effect damage. So that's why I prefer to destroy my opponent with his detach effect. Of course, we've got ourselves our assembled Nightingale, which is just summon out a bunch of level 1s, turn it into this, and just keep pecking your opponent until they got very few life points. Really good for setting up for Lionheart to win later or vice versa. So, Assembled Nightingale, also, it's got its very powerful defensive ability where you take no damage. Your Leerless can't be destroyed for that turn. It works fairly well. Even if your opponent negates it, well, if they chain, it'll still negate it, but if they negate it afterwards, is what I'm saying. It'll still keep the protection there. So it's a nice card. Sylvan Princess Bright, another very nice card. You summon it a lot with King Kabaya and the like. Detach material, excavate a card. If it's a spell trap, you keep it. If it's a monster, it goes to the graveyard. So obvious dumping of monsters, searching your spell traps, a very nice card. And our last extra deck monster today, we got Slacker Magician, which is something I play only if I know Sylvan's not going to work or I already have all the spell traps I could ever want. It's a nice little bit of defensive monster, can't be destroyed in battle once per turn. And something a lot of people forget is its detach effect, where you can detach a material in order to prevent it from being targeted by things. And that's not a once per turn or per chain sort of effect. So people will often, try to target it with something, and then they'll try to negate it with something like impermanence, and then you'll negate the impermanence as well. So eat up your opponent's stuff if they're just being dum-dums about it. So I run it at 1 and it works out fine for me. As for our side of the deck, we have a lot of things. We got Nibiru, which is a nice anti-meta sort of card. Your opponent goes into big combos, tribute them all for Nibiru, and your opponent gets a big old token, but if you can follow up with a Lionheart, beat into the big token, do lots of damage, especially with the twin swords. So that's certainly a combo you can do. It works rather well. I don't do it myself, but that's why it's in the side deck. It's if you feel like trying that out. Additional level 1 monsters to play. We got Battle of Fader. Pretty standard thing, just summon it out when you have no monsters and you're taking direct damage. And you end the battle phase and you keep a level 1 monster. Obviously, go into other things afterwards. Turbo Booster. You normal summon a monster, you get to special summon this. Pretty self-explanatory. This is Steel Swarm Cell, just something I discovered while building my side deck here. If you have no monsters, you can just summon this from your hand. It doesn't interrupt your plays because you don't tribute summon or anything, and you don't synchro summon, so it doesn't really affect you there. And then we got Scapegoat, which is just a cheeky little thing. It kind of reminded me of Kuribohs and Multiply, because when this is flipped, you summon all the tokens you want. And so if the Scapegoat survives for a turn, or you will Boku for it, you get all the tokens you want. So it's a nice little thing. We got Where Art Thou for easy searching of level 1 monsters. I just don't play it because we have Kuriboh to gain life points back. I prefer to keep my life points, but you can certainly run a couple copies of Where Art Thou if you feel like searching even more. Call by the Grave, obvious for stopping the opponent from stopping your searches. As for the rest of it, this is just additional Link 4s and such you can go into. Zeravoros, Borrelsword, Mr. Abomination, good old Nightmare Griffin, because if you can get enough monsters on the board, which is certainly possible, but if you get Kuriboh, Multiply, and the Flute on the board, you can certainly go into a Link Kuriboh, a Masquerena. You'd have to tech in the Proxy Dragon and all that stuff. But if you can get Link Kuriboh and all this on the board, you can also get out Nightmare Griffin. And your opponent won't be able to use their monster effects because they won't be linked. So this is all just side stuff, like I said. This is all just additional sort of strategies you can go for. You know, they all work out. So there's my deck profile, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. You know, Kuriboh's one of my favorite archetypes. I really hope that they get more support soon. I really wish they would reprint this to include all Kuribohs, but that's a pipe dream, I suppose. So, hope you enjoyed this little quickie video. Smash like if you did. And your boy will be back with you next time with more dueling action and more replays and deck profiles every once in a while. So, take care, everybody. Stay safe. Have fun. And I'll see you next time.